Hi, I'm Laura Bennett. Welcome to my reading of When the Wind Blows, Book 1 in my Winds of Redemption series.
Chapter 2. Jessica Ray Freeman stared out the window at the inclement weather. It matched the storminess of her heart. As soon as Alec left, she heard the weather alert for a hurricane warning. He was out there with no car and not even an umbrella, thanks to her. These fights were so stupid. She ended up hating herself and him, at least for a few hours until she thought of not having him around. From the moment he'd spilled his coffee on her at Cool Beans, she'd been hooked. How could she love someone so much and hate them at the same time? The sky lit up, followed by a booming crack that rattled the windows. Jessica gasped and backed away, with a hand on her still flat stomach. Turning away, she paced to the couch and backed across the living room of their condo a couple of times. She'd meant to tell Alec, really, she had. But then he'd started in about the vacation. She'd clammed up, afraid he'd be upset by the news that should have been shared with celebrating, even if it hadn't been planned. But how could they celebrate something he obviously didn't want? What the? Jess threw a pillow from the couch at the floor with a whispered expletive. Nothing was turning out the way she wanted it to. Why did he have to start that stupid fight? Why did they fight at all? All the time. She was so tired of it, but she didn't know what to do. One friend gave her a book about marriage. Another said, call it quits and move on. Most of them claimed she needed more nights out with the girls and a few shots. But that life no longer appealed to her, and shots were not an option, at least not for the next 7 months or so. Alec's plans for a summer vacation next year were shot. Jessica plopped down on the couch. She needed to concentrate on her work. Her promise to Alec that she could replace her income within 6 months was behind by 2. Jobs were coming in more frequently, but they were still feeling the pinch of her leaving her job to go freelance full-time. Once this project was completed, the startup company promised her a steady stream of regular work as well as referrals. She couldn't afford to mess this up. No matter how much she and Alec couldn't get along, she had to focus. Standing up, Jessica bent down, retrieved the object of her wrath, and tossed it back on the couch. What she really needed was a cup of tea before she got to work. If this storm turned into a hurricane they anticipated, they could be without power for a few days. At least they had plenty of freeze-dried food and gallons of water stored up. Alec made sure they had everything they required should an emergency arise. She'd teased him about being too obsessed with batteries and his solar-powered radio and chargers, but truthfully, his preparations gave her a sense of safety that she appreciated. Had she ever told him that? After popping her mug of water into the microwave for a couple of minutes, she stirred some honey into hot water as the tea bag steeped. 1 chai, 1 peppermint. Mixed with a touch of milk, it made the perfect peppermint chai latte that settled her stomach. She grabbed the can of whipped cream from the refrigerator door, one of her indulgences, as Alec called them. He'd named a few earlier that morning, ones he thought she could do without. His accusations about her frivolous expenditures brought pangs of guilt. She had exploded in defensive anger. Getting her nails done began when her mom first took her as a preteen. It was a special, sentimental mother-daughter expedition that carried on long past the time of her mother's passing 3 years ago. Every week, as her favorite manicurist painted her nails, she thought of those memories and felt closer to her mom. She missed her more than ever, especially now. Why couldn't Alec understand that? Have you ever explained it to him? The thought stopped her stirring. Begrudgingly, she admitted to herself that she often expected Alec to know her thoughts and feelings, but she didn't communicate them well or at all. But if he really cared, wouldn't he know what she needed? Her mom always knew. Why didn't her husband? Was it that he didn't care, or was it a guy thing? Or maybe the problem was that she didn't fully share her needs. Jessica defended herself in her mind. She told him lots of things that he never seemed to remember, like how much she wanted to spend time having fun with him, or what about all the times she asked him to help her in the kitchen. Another flash and crack brought her head up. The wind lashed the trees outside. From their living room window, she could see the palm trees down on the beach across the street bending in the onslaught. Maybe this storm would be a bad one. She flipped on the television news and turned on her computer. A warning moved across the bottom of the screen where a reporter showed the devastation on the northwest coast of Cuba and the eastern city of Cancun, Mexico, where the hurricane had danced a path between the two countries. Instead of heading straight through the Gulf toward Louisiana, the trajectory now showed it turning toward them and blowing across the state to the Atlantic. A smaller tropical storm spun around off the coast where the Mexico and Texas borders met, pushing this hurricane, Harriet, east. The prediction showed it could hit the west coast of Florida within the next 6 to 12 hours, depending on its speed, which was increasing rapidly. Jessica picked up her phone and called Alec. The call went to voicemail. Of course, he couldn't answer if he was with a patient. But was he? Did he even make it to work? With the coming storm, wouldn't the office be closed? The questions and doubts piled up in her, creating a mounting fear. She set the can of whipped cream back in the fridge and took a sip of tea. That first sip always calmed her, but today it barely touched her worried heart. What if the last words Alec heard from her were the awful ones she spouted as he slammed out the door this morning? The second sip did nothing to calm her, so she took in a long breath and tried counting 10. She focused on her yoga breathing methods, not working. By the count of 4, new fears rose in her. Even if Alec made it to work and didn't answer because he was busy, how could he make it home? Would he be stranded? Would she be stuck by herself at home? She turned to the television news again. Watching the hurricane's wake of devastation did nothing but accelerate her fear. In the past 30 minutes, it had gained speed as it moved toward them. If Alec had a normal schedule, he wouldn't make it in time before the outer edge hit them this evening. Since the storm was already flinging rain with gusty winds their way, she didn't see how he'd be safe. And what if the trolley stopped running? There was no other way to get to Fort Myers Beach from his office at Summerlin Crossing, even though it was only a few miles away. Jessica paced back and forth in the living room, her mug grasped firmly in both hands. Should she go pick him up? Her computer dinged that she had a new email. Checking her inbox, she noted the headline, Estimated Completion of Project. Indecision tugged at her. Work on the project? Go get Alec? She took another gulp of tea and weighed the options. It would be foolish to leave until she heard from her husband. He could be busy all day, or on his way back even now. Hopefully, he'd see she called and return her call soon. In the meantime, she needed to get a handle on her work. They needed the money now more than ever. Jessica turned down the volume on the television, but left it on the Weather Channel. She'd give Alec another 30 minutes and then call him again. She forced another few sips of tea to calm her whirling stomach and grabbed a handful of pretzels from the bag in the cupboard. They seemed to help. The wind howled, but once Jessica got into her work, moving and resizing pictures and designing brand names, ideas for the new company, the noise diminished to become background white noise. The droning weather report repeated in the distance. When she finally settled on a layout she liked, she looked at her computer clock and stretched her neck. Alec hadn't called, and nearly 2 hours had passed. She picked up her phone and cursed her stupidity. She missed his call an hour ago. Her phone was still on silent from the night before. No voicemail. Jessica hit call. Maybe she'd catch him between appointments. Or even better, maybe he was on his way home.